Okay, Tom, you're on.
Okay. I was born in McCooK, Nebraska in 1928. On 24th of December, and from there it takes all sorts of turns. The I went to school. I went to high school here in McCooK, and then the Army came along, and
Well, let's step back just a little bit.
okay,
Who were your parents?
okay. God Almighty, see, and then another thing, I run into those blanks. Wait, I run into some of those blanks that are in there. But my parents were Lloyd and Alice Kiplinger. Lloyd was an attorney, and Mother was his legal secretary. And then went to high school in McCooK.
Now, you said your father died when you were 2.
My father died when I was 2.
Okay, so who did you and your mother go live with then?
Then we went to live with my grandparents who were immigrants from Russia, and over on the Volga River. It wasn't meant as well as
They were Germans from Russia, the Russians that settled around McCooK?
what's that?
They called them Russians, I believe.
Yeah, they were all Russians. They were all Russians, a whole batch of them, and they were all lived down along on South Street. Is where they lived. Most of them lived on South Street.
What were their last names?
Oh heavens, I don't know. There was Getmans.
Well, Bauer, was that your family name?
Yeah, and the folks' name was Bauer, and there was Troops and that was a lot of them were Troops. Ray Troop was one of those that was known all over town and for his powers of throwing carny wrestlers through the windows in McCooK, Nebraska.
I'll be. Now, you said you graduated from high school in 1946.
Yeah.
Were you involved in rodeoing, or what do you call it, riding horses and roping things?
No, not in high school.
Oh.
No. That was after high school, but right after high school that I started roping those calves in high school because my uncle would go to town. He and his wife would go to town and they'd leave me out here. And they had a kind of just a ruddy calf that was running around out here, and I'd try to get them to go to town to go to church and let me alone so I could go rope that calf out here. And then, so that's where I started roping, was out in this cornfield out south there. And did so everything on my own volition. That was just, and I got started, and then I found a friend over that lived at Selden, Kansas, that came up and let me use his horse, his big horse, then so I could go rodeoing with him. And that's what we did. Then we went on several occasions. We went to all the rodeos, and there was a rodeo at Atwood and one in Stratton and one at that time, and we went to all those rodeos.
Did you have a special event that you just did one event, or did you do more than one?
Oh yes, I had to ride bulls like everybody other.
So which bones did you break?
What's that?
Did you break any bones?
No, I guess one. No, I don't think, but no major bones. I think I broke a wrist or something, kind of, in the interim on that way. And I rode both for a little while, and a bareback horse or two, and found out that I didn't think you were going to live very long doing that, and so I just went back to roping calves, and then I just progressed and as it went. But everything wasn't honed down to like it is today, which it sure isn't. I mean, there's been, if you got one on the ground in 15 or 16 seconds, that was as fast as you were going to get them down. And so it's just progressed from that to now. And,
Did you win any prize money?
oh yeah, we went to Stratton one time, won a whole $160. But at the wages I was getting, that was like a fortune. $160. I'd have to work all summer long to get $160 in wages, because I think I got paid $1 a week. I think it was $1 a week, and boy, you had to work like hell to get that done. And
What kind of jobs did you do during the summer?
with that money,
What kind of jobs did you do during the summer?
oh, all kinds of things. That he'd get up in the morning at 5 o'clock, go harness the horses, and then go work beets or corn or whatever you happen to have that day and to do, and then you work till supper time, and which was early enough, but the hell of it is, he went back to the field and worked some more, and by the time I was ready, had gotten all that done, why, you were ready to go to bed too. And my grandfather had a thing about we didn't want to overwork the draft horses, so we walked behind all that 10-cent equipment that we had, and after you walked all day in that field and up and down those rows, and there was no seat on anything, and you just weren't ready to go to bed.
Hadn't they invented tractors by then?
What?
Hadn't they invented tractors by then?
They had just invented tractors. I mean, these were early models. And my uncle drove the tractors, and I drove the horses. And, so that worked out pretty good anyway, because I didn't want to drive that tractor anyhow. And so that was a good trade-off.
Now, did you learn to drive a car when you were in high school?
Yeah, I think my mother taught me to drive, as a matter of fact. And that was in high school, so when I got old enough I could get a license. And did. And then that was, but I wasn't going to get any cars, I can tell you that. That was not on the program. That was that reminded me. No, that reminded me. Trump's introducer was Bobby Knight at this last gathering they had in Indiana. And so Bobby Knight introduced Trump, who I think will make a good president, and whether anybody else does or not's immaterial to me. I think he'll do all right. And so I don't want to get into the political field at all. And
So you graduated high school in 1946,
yeah,
and then you went on to Colorado to college. Is that correct?
yeah, okay. That's what I did. I graduated from high school then in 1946, and then went to Colorado State that fall of 46, and traveled through the mighty halls and graduated in 1950.
You told a story about one of your instructors that was interesting. Can you repeat that story?
Oh yeah, I was telling some guy that Mom wouldn't like these grades because we were always off rodeo when we should have been studying, and he said, well, he didn't call me by name because he didn't know it. I was in his sheep class, I guess. He was the sheep instructor anyway, on sheep. And he said it was okay that I didn't have to worry about that because the A and B students all went to school to teach and those other jobs. And he said it was the C students that built the buildings. And that was right, and he did. Now, upon completion of that, then I had all the farming that I knew I was going to do by the time I came out of school, and came home, and there was a little drag in time between, so we decided to pack our gear, and a friend of mine from New Mexico and I went south and to Amarillo, and found work up in northeastern New Mexico on the spool cattle company, and we worked there until it was time to answer Uncle Sam's call and put my saddle in the sack and came home.
So you were an actual cowboy down there.
And I was actually a cowboy. Yeah, that's what I did. And I've got some pictures in my album of stuff. It's in a disarray like everything. But then Pat went on. Oh God, I can't remember what town. I should know it because that's the western border of the ranch country down there, and he stayed in the ranching business till he retired, and then I came and went to the services, was inducted into the service in Kansas, I believe, Fort something.
Fort Riley?
Fort Riley. It was Fort Riley that took in, and then they shipped us to Alabama, to Fort Rucker, Alabama, and that's where my career started, in the infantry. And we tromped all over Alabama to see if we could kill the weeds. And then by some fortunate circumstance, I received a transfer into the Veterinary Corps and became a meat inspector, and went to school in Chicago, Illinois, and I studied that. When I went to Chicago, I didn't do anything but watch for or take care of that duty, because I didn't want to. I didn't want back in the infantry anymore, and received never. I don't know as I ever received actual release from the infantry, but at least when I went into the bar in Chicago one day, we were going to school, and I went up there and I kept the blue braid on my hat, or on my cap, and we walked into the bar, and some fellow said, one of the participants up there that was a dyed-in-the-wool military man, and he said, give that fella a free drink on me, because it designated that blue braid belonged to the infantry, and the rest of those guys had that squirrels had the wrong kind of stuff. So that was one thing that I gained. I gained recognition for my military service from that one guy in the bar. And so I was rewarded well for that, and then made my way back to Nebraska after I got out of there.
Well, you mentioned spending some time in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah, well, yeah, that was during the military service, all right. Yeah, I served as a meat inspector in Atlanta, Georgia, and they issued me a staff car and all these riders that had to go along to help inspect that meat. And I'd earned some corporal stripes in the infantry when I was in the Army, and that's the only reason I got to drive the car, was because I'd gotten the corporal stripes in the Army, and it made it kind of handy. For one thing was that I wasn't ready to go home. You have to understand that when we ran military meet, we did it first. And we were always done by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So I decided that it wasn't necessary to get that staff car back to Fort Rucker. That was the Fort McPherson. By the time I'd been to there, that was Fort McPherson right there in Atlanta. And so I'd go take those guys back to the base if that's where they wanted to go. And I'd take the car and I'd take it back downtown. And there was a big lake that people all went swimming in. And they'd come. Then those guys could go back home, and I went down there. And then they had those old magnolia trees that you see hanging on and leaves came clear to the ground, and I'd drive up under those leaves so the
Military police.
yeah, military police, thank you. And so the military police couldn't see that car parked under there, and then I'd go swim till about 4 o'clock. Then I could get back to base by 5 o'clock. And that made a kind of a nice pastime. And was worth that. And then incidentally, on this job, I found that I had all evening to find a job, so I got a job as a bartender in one of the establishments there in town, and I could go to work about 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, and then I could leave till, boy, was that a job. And so then I tended bar. I got so I was kind of like a professional bartender, and made good money. And I don't suppose you'd tell this to anybody else. But anyway, when I went to work there, the boss's name was Jimmy Octoloni. If that would tell you anything, you might know it was kind of a gangsterized outfit, and everybody was required to clip the till. And so they said if you weren't going to clip the till, they didn't want you hired. They wouldn't hire you.
What is clip the till?
What?
What's clip the till?
Take money out of it. And you take money out of the till so that the company didn't know about, and so everybody clipped the till. He took me down, showed me how to clip the till, how they clipped the till, and so I clipped the till, and I spent mine. Then when I went back to work, I had all that extra money. And I left it there, and then all the customers that came in, if they were pretty good looking, they came down on mine because they got free drinks out of the clip.
You just kind of reinvested it.
Yeah, I reinvested it. I didn't feel right about clipping the till, but there were certain circumstances you could even it up. You could give them their money back. That's true. And so then I guess I left there when.
Well, you had one more interesting story about 3-day passes in your trip to Louisiana.
Oh yeah. Okay, thank you. And during the time that I was in the infantry, why, we could never take a 3-day pass, and the guys that could, they generally gave their 3 days to somebody else and stood there watch for them. And so one time I talked to one guy, and we decided we'd use that 3-day pass and go to Opelousas, Louisiana, to stay on an invitation from Chrysler, from I've kind of forgotten the guy's name. But anyway, we went to stay with him, and when we got down there, I thought maybe we'd get a little money. I'll cut this and shorter. Then when we got down there, we started on this tour across, which was interesting enough in itself, and had some stories along the way, but maybe I'll skip those.
Well, tell the one about the redneck and the best Yankees are found in certain spots.
Oh yeah, well, one of those guys stopped and picked us up in Biloxi, Mississippi, and we were hitchhiking along there, and this guy picked us up and said, "You all sound like Yankees to me," which was not so. So we told him that. But he didn't look like he believed us, and I don't think he did, because he pointed up to the cemetery. He said, "You see that cemetery up there?" And I said, "Yeah, we see it." And he said that was full of Yankees, and that's the way we liked our Yankees. They were all up in the cemetery. So I was glad to get out of the truck on that one, and got on our way, because I didn't know if he met us or not, but I thought so, because he was glad to let us out, and I was glad to get out anyway. And then we went, I don't...
Well, you had a story about fireworks in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, well, I spent the night in jail in Baton Rouge because the guys that picked us up next were in the Air Corps, and they were, it was illegal to have fireworks in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, on the inside of that. Well, that's their 4th of July, I guess, because everybody fires off fireworks in January, not in July. And then the cops picked us up just as soon as we got across the city lines. And the guy driving the car he said, "Oh, don't worry about it." He said, "We won't be in there very long." And so he took us down, and they put us in the what do they call those pens? Bullpen or whatever it is. They put all those criminals in, and drunks. And we were in there a little while, and somebody came along and said hi to that guy, and they said, "Well, your dad will be down and get you out in a little bit." And they did. They came and got him out, and then they came back and got his friend out and left us in there. And I bet they had a good time. I bet the Air Corps suffered no pain that night. But they did us kind of a favor in the long run. That gave us some place to stay overnight, and they didn't charge us any rent, but they didn't feed us the next morning either. And they came and got us and took us out to the west edge of Baton Rouge and dumped us out. We were on our way to Opelousas again, and that was early.
So now you've just been, one of your pinnacle parts in life, you were a vagrant.
Yes.
For one night.
Yeah.
So now you're on the west edge of Baton Rouge, and the rest of your story is?
Well, the rest of that is, then we went through Port Bear, and I was kind of impressed with Port Bear for some reason, I don't know. But then we went on to Opelousas, and we came to oh God, can we stop that thing and together with all those, and you don't know, and the guy had a name, and probably isn't important.
No, just a friend. So they were going to see a friend's house.
The thing about it was, when we got over there, here was about 10 kids running around the yard, and they were and I could see that there was no cash help coming from that family because they didn't have any. And they were as poor as the vagrants that were on the road. And, well, maybe it isn't important. Name wouldn't be important. But anyway, his mother was highly elated that they had company from over. Boy, it'd be a lot handier to have his name, but I just can't think of it. But anyway, she had fixed a French dish. Oh, incidentally, they all spoke French too down there. No English, no English. And to find somebody that late in life and find out that they went through life and didn't ever speak any English, and they didn't. They were French, and so she fixed this French dish for us to eat, and then to tell the part that's interesting about it is that the mother was blind when she cooked that chicken, and she left the feathers on some of it because she couldn't see them. And then we sat down to the meal, and you knew those feathers were in there and everything else, and that's the hardest place I believe I've ever ate in my whole life. But I ate it and acted like it was good. Matter of fact, they offered me seconds, and I took another piece, and I thought if the first one didn't kill me, I guess I would. And the little kids were sitting there looking at me and wishing they could have that chicken, and I wish, they don't know how bad I wish they had it. But anyway, we got through that meal. Then the mother gave us their bed to sleep in the house, and so the guy from Arizona and I slept on their bed, on their accommodations that night, and we got up in the morning and splashed a little water on and went to town. And then we went to the dance that night, I guess, with what we culminated the tour with, and then the next day there were some guys we knew coming back through that were coming off of those 3-day passes that were going to pick us up so we didn't have to hitchhike home. And that was about all it was, but oh dear.
How many years did you spend in the Army?
Two.
Two.
Yeah, 2. I did all that in 2 years.
Plus the stories you didn't tell. Yes.
Now, there's some more stories that went along with it. You want to shut that off a minute and give me Crazy Joe Gallo. Yeah, I don't know. Those gangsters killed old Crazy Joe Gallo, I think in Chicago someplace or somewhere. I don't know what happened to him, but anyway, his name was Joe Gallo the same. And I had a phone number that I could call him. And then when we moved from 505 West 4th to the country, we lost the cabinet that had his phone number in it. We lost his address and his phone number and the whole ball of wax, and I never talked to him again.
Were you told that he had a black convertible?
Yeah.
And you were telling a story about driving around with him.
Yeah. Well, we could go anywhere we wanted to when we got off post, you know, even in Alabama. And then we could take that and go partying with the thing, you know, and boy, we had lots of range that we could run on, and see, he was he was one of, I don't know what you'd call him. He was a liberal. Oh, he was a friend of the Black Hand. If you know what the Black Hand is, well, that's pre-gangster talk for the Black Hand are gangsters from the first go. In other words, they're part of the mafia, and they were the early part of the mafia, because I'd never heard of the Black Hand till I heard of Joe, and then his father had kicked him out of the house when he was 13 years old, and he'd been making it on the streets on his own since he was 13, and that encompassed many things, like running numbers for the mob, and other things that they did. He was a runner of some game they played. I can't remember the name of that. The numbers game, I guess they called it. And he was a runner for the numbers gang, for the mafia, and then ended up in the same army that I was in. And here he was, and he had this convertible, and we thought we should use it as much as we could. That was to keep it running. And so that's what we did. And we did a lot of it. And then from there, I went to Alabama, over to Fort McPherson in Georgia. Went on this career of being an astute officer and an inspector for the food chain for the Army. And have a story or two about that, but we could skip those. And then we probably should get back to McCooK, Nebraska.
So after you completed your 2 years service, you moved back to McCooK from Georgia.
Yeah, I came back to McCooK then, and I thought I ought to settle down. And I got back all right, but the settling down I'm not sure about whether you'd call that a settled life or not. But I was getting too old to get married, and then there was this thing of making a living for everybody, and so I worked for the railroad company and Farmers Home Administration in Kansas. Then I took a position as bookkeeper for the PCA, and then a couple of years later, or a year later.
Was that here in McCooK?
What?
The PCA, was that here in McCooK?
Yeah, that was here in McCooK, and what it is today is the federal
FDIC?
No. It's out there on the corner of going out of town. I can't remember. They're still in the loan business. They still loan money to Farm Service Agency, I guess they call it. And it's still a viable going organization, but they've had a couple of restructurings since I was there. And when I was there, they didn't need to restructure.
So when you came back to McCooK, did you get back into calf roping again?
Oh yeah, and then when I got back, why, we sort of established a little roping club here around. It was out to Liverts for a while, and then down here for a while, and Bob Logan and Larry Liebert came to rope with me all the time, and I did it kind of like it was a mainstream of life sort of thing. I practiced faithfully, and we'd get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and my mother'd go out. She'd turn those calves out, and we'd get those calves roped before it got too hot during the day. And I built an arena down here, and we just kept roping.
Who were some of your good friends at that time?
Oh, at that time, oh, Liebert and Logan were my best friends, and then, oh, I don't know, there was those guys up in Dundee County. They come rope with me, and Clark Brown from North Platte, he was a roper, and he came to visit, and Lawrence Calhoun, he was a bulldogger from up at North Platte. He came to see me often, and Harrison Halligan was a good friend of mine, and that was all just right at that one time.
Okay, do we want to hear about your stroke of genius?
Okay. I didn't work at getting that money, but I figured out how not to spend it. And I thought that if I was going to be in the cattle business, I didn't have enough country to run cows. So I decided that I'd run steers and buy some 400-pound calves or less, and run those over, make yearlings out of them, clean up the mess at the end of the year, sell out the cattle. Then I could add up my money and see where the next money was coming from, and there were some years in there that they couldn't, but at least I wasn't tied up to any one thing, because I could go any which way I wanted to with not having cows. So that's what it was, and I kept acquiring some land along the line.
Down here in the bottom?
Yeah, well, no, it was from Palisade to, I've still got that land at Palisade. And then I've got that place up there where Bob lives. And that leaves me about 2,000 acres of grass, something like that. And the rest of it's been sold because of the trees were getting so bad on that one south of Culverson. And I knew how to spray musk thistles, but I didn't know how to kill those trees. And so I sold that. And it was time to slow down a little anyway. And I was up to about running 800 steers. And buy them about 400 or less, and then sell them when they got to weighing about 800. I'd sell them. Then I got so I bought them at 600 pounds and then sell them at 900 pounds because that stopped that terrible weaning, all that work weaning those calves. And it just sort of manifests itself because I kept all that land tied together. And for a long time, there was a long time in there that those yearling cattle made a lot of money, and they did make a lot of money.
Did you invest in the stock market too?
Oh yes, I got some lessons in there, but I kept investing in the stock market because I didn't have any place else to put it. And so then here just recently, and it is fairly recently anyway, in the last 10 years or so, it came time to get rid of some of that land, and the state of Nebraska isn't going to like this, but I don't care whether they do or don't. They're the highest tax state in the Union, and I believe probably are the highest. Now there were only 2 states ahead of us before this, and that was California and New York. They were both higher taxed than we are, but still there. And so but anyway, that's what started this building project. I tried to give the stuff to Colorado State, and they weren't interested enough to let it in let it go without out-of-state tuition, and I didn't want to give it to them because, my God, that cut that down what I could give to them in half, almost. And I wasn't going to do that, and so then I gave it to Nebraska, and then Nebraska came along and took my water away from me, my irrigation water, and so then I thought, well, maybe if we just gave it to the county, maybe we could do something with it. And I'm glad I made the decision, and I did, because I think maybe McCooK needs the help, and they really do need the help. And right now, that arena brings in 30,000 people to McCooK, Nebraska, every year in town to spend their money. Then they're not going to stay here because they don't want to pay the taxes. And if they don't stay here, we'll take it because we need them to pay ours. and that's how this all started. And of course, there's things along the line that change this up and down a little, but the way it's worked out, it's been good for everybody that lives here, and I'm afraid they're going to run out of money here. Now, we got a tax increase this last year of about $6,000 and a refund about $1,800, I guess, something on that order. Well, if that's a way of lowering taxes, it's a terrible way. And they've got to make some restructuring, I believe, in the tax system here to get on along with things just like they are. They're just not working. and they're closing down, having to close down this, that, and the other thing. And so that's how this project got started in McCooK. And then I've gone to the trouble to find a tax-free status that nobody else has it around here, and that's a working, they call it a working foundation. And I asked the girl what about a working foundation, and she said nobody has one up in here. And so I thought maybe that'd work for us. And she said, the thing is about a working foundation, she said that a working foundation doesn't mean that you just quit doing anything and let somebody else spend your money. That you're supposed to spend it yourself.
Yeah.
And so that that your board of directors has control over that money. And so they're the ones that get to say what it's spent for.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What are your plans for the arena? Now, you have this beautiful arena that you bring in 30,000 people a year for. Do you have additional plans for it?
Oh, yeah. Of course, I can't tell you what the plans are, because that comes from outside.
Oh.
That comes from the outside producers that put these on. They come on and put them on as their individuals. They stand the expenses. You don't have any expense with the arena. It just brings people in.
Well, I mean, are you going to expand it? You have this working foundation. Are you going to add to it? You said something about a place to bathe the horses or something like that.
Yeah, and it does have. And one of those producers told me that if I would put up that bathhouse for those horses, I used to bath mine all the time to keep them. Oh, I didn't. But anyway, there's a Connie Hendricks that told me that she'd bring me 900 horses if I'd put that up in that bathhouse. So I thought, for about 40 or 50,000 or 60, whatever it takes to do that, why, I was going to do that. I've had some bonds come due, and there's no place to go run and put them in the stock market now. There's some, but not much. So I thought it would be probably to my best interest to build the building and get the 900 horses, and before they got someplace else, went someplace else.
So, are you going to name this Tom's Bathhouse or something?
Yeah. No, I said there's no name on the bathhouse yet.
Or we call it Tom's Bathhouse and Spa.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and spa.
But anyway, I just thought it would be a better investment than the stock market.
Mm-hmm. Well, it certainly is wonderful for McCooK and Red Willow County. Oh my gosh, what a wonderful assets you have up there. You've got the big arena,
Yeah.
and then you're going to have Tom's Bath and Daily Spa.
Right.
Yeah.
And what else do you have up there?
That's well, there's that Alice Kiplinger building that needs to be finished and get to going, and with the addition of this, we'll put that bathhouse somewhere over in an attached building, and if it's just kind of kind of all together in one place. Then, and then they can rinse their horses off and do all of it here. And there's four different buildings that I've put up, I guess, since then. There was an addition to the arena that was about 100 feet long and 40-some feet wide, I think, was room. So now they've got a place they can unload their horses and put them under the shed, take them up there and warm them up in there, or take them over to that Kiplinger arena. And that other arena was supposed to do for the horses that need we just needed those stalls, so we've got some place to put those stalls, and we've added about 200 stalls to the system, and this will make about 3. And we just needed all this kind of stuff, and it all came at one time, and it was kind of inconvenient. But when they started cashing some of those bonds that I'd bought, they were yielding 4 to 5%, something like that. Now you're lucky if you can get 3, and I just didn't want to do that, and I thought it would be cheaper to put up that thing that those horses that lady said she'd bring in would pay way bigger dividends than that, and so that's how come we're doing this one, and that's the last building I know of. And besides that, that's got it all pretty well covered, whatever you want to do with an arena. And I might also answer something that the Phillipsburg Rodeo donated us some bucking shoots, and that was a donation from there, and I think Garrett Noakes was instrumental getting the bucking shoots donated, and I think the clincher was my secretary treasurer that I think really culminated the deal, and they gave that to the college, and so those bucking shoots belong to the college, but I'll have to figure out some way to get it out of them. So they leave them here anyway.
Well, you certainly had a long and varied career, and you are building this beautiful asset at the fairgrounds that will outlast all of us in this room.
Well, I intended that, and this got to be a little more than I intended, but it worked all right. And of course, that was I knew it'd work, but I didn't know this well. I really didn't know when we started, but we started the right way. And as that thing developed, and it's in use now 80% of the time, I suppose, and it's worked out really well. That's all I can say, and I'm happy I did it. I had some times I got mad at people along the way, but oh well, that's just kind of me. I'd have been mad about something anyway. And
I have to admire you, sir. You've spent your life accumulating all these assets
Yeah,
and making a difference along the way, and now you're giving it back
yeah,
to the community that you begin in.
yeah.
What a wonderful thing to do, and I thank you personally.
Well, everything I've done, and what I've done, there's absolutely no tax money involved. Absolutely no tax money to anybody. And I can say that I was happy to give them something that don't cost them anything. I'll have a friend of mine mad at me here if I don't stop that. Because I don't agree with the way McCook's going, and I just don't. I think if somebody wants to give them something, Lemoyne Anderson gave him a lot of stuff, and what he gave him is good, and I've used some of the facilities that he gave him, and but this is a different way, and I think there are some different ways that they can do some of that stuff. But they won't agree with me anyway, so I just quit trying to sell them the...
Well, you're more of a doer. You just did it.
What?
Said you're more of a doer. You just did it your way.
Yeah,
Like, who's that singer?
Yeah.
Frank Sinatra? I did it my way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did that. This is pretty much my idea, all of it. And when it got started, why, it just kept growing, and it's growing too fast, really. But I guess came along sometime, I've got some more money, and I might just as well give it to them.
That's right.
Yep.
And,
Because primarily it's mostly the youth that get the benefit out of it.
oh yeah,
And what better thing is to learn the responsibility of having a horse to take care of, and the practice it takes, and the dedication, and the work of showing it.
yeah.
You're helping build young lives.
Yeah, it was a worthwhile cause. I just can't think of anything I could have done better.
I can't think of anything either.
And that's where it all came out anyway. And,